I was just saying to Kerry Washington that I think before this film, I didn't know what TikTok was. And Kerry Washington's really, like, informed me about that.
Josh O'Connor,
Hi.
it's so great to see you. And
So
you
great to see
are so in demand. So thank you for coming in.
Of course.
You've had, I think, 4 films out this year.
Yeah.
And you've been very busy on the festival circuit as well. And obviously, Wake Up Dead Man. But you also have a really full life outside of acting.
Yeah.
And I just need to know, for you to verify for me, frog ponds,
Yes.
real or not?
Real. That is real. Very recently, a frog pond. Me and my brothers, when we were growing up, that was one of our favourite things to do, was to dig holes and fill it with water and have a pond in our garden. We had a very successful pond growing up with lots of frogs. And so when I moved out into the countryside a few years ago, it was one of the first things I did. And my little brother and I dug up a hole, and you fill it with water and some plants, and it looks like it's been there forever. But the thing about frogs is that the idea is that they just turn up. You know, they're around and they're looking for a home, and then they rock up. And it's taken a couple of years, but they are now here. So I'm thrilled.
And how many frogs do you have?
I've counted 4. And I mean, I don't know if it's the same one. I've counted it 4 times. I think there's 4. And, you know, hopefully we get frog spawn and some more for next year.
Are frogs like rabbits where suddenly there's 4 and then there's 40?
Yeah, that is kind of how it works. And if it gets too overcrowded, they'll go and find someone else's pond to hang out in.
Oh, I love that. Okay, facts. I love it. I was like, wait, I have to ask
Yeah,
him this.
it's true. I don't know how it got out. I guess I talked about it once. But yeah.
It's great. Okay, so the last time we talked, it was for The Crown, where you were amazing and
Thanks.
well rewarded for brilliant performance.
Yeah.
And we all felt like we could discover you. I think Americans felt like, oh my God, we've
Right,
discovered this new actor that had been working for a while.
Yeah.
But for us, it was a discovery.
Yeah.
And now you're here for Wake Up Dead Man.
Yes.
Which is very exciting and very good.
Yeah.
So I will say to everybody watching or listening, there will be no spoilers. I will not
Very
do
good.
that.
Well, you won't.
For
I'm going to
whodunit.
try not to as well. It's hard. It's really hard.
But you play, this is again Rian Johnson. This
Yeah.
is the 3rd installment
Right.
of the Knives Out franchise. And you play boxer turned priest, Father Judd.
Yes.
Duplessis?
Duplanticy is correct. Yeah, tough. Duplicity sometimes, depending on how my dyslexia was that day.
Yeah,
but
same. Oh, I
Duplanticy.
love that. I'm very dyslexic too.
Me too. Yeah.
My producer is always like, "Oh, we need to do a retrack."
Yeah.
You
I get that
inverted
a lot.
all the letters.
Yeah.
All right. So, how did you and Ryan prep for this role?
You know, I mean, sort of in the same way as I do every other role. I mean, you know, I'd never worked on a project with this scale, really. I mean, The Crown, I suppose, is the closest thing to this kind of scale, but to be on in a studio with a big movie and with Rian Johnson at the helm, and with people like Glenn Close and Kerry Washington and Andrew Scott and Katie Spenny and Darren McCormack, you know, Josh Brolin, you know, these incredible movie stars. I sort of went in thinking that, you know, this is going to be one of those ones where it's like private work and Ryan's going to be too busy playing with lights and cranes and explosions and stuff. The truth is that Ryan is still that same director who made Brick and Looper, and he's a proper filmmaker, and he's an actor's director who gives so much time to you as an actor that it felt, you know, it's just like being in an independent movie, the kind of movies I'm used to. And so our first sort of conversations were around faith and to do with the kind of complexities of faith, the different interpretations of the same text, and how, you know, 2 people can be in the same church, believing the same God, but have completely opposing opinions on that same God. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, and then the kind of the fundamentals of prepping a character, which is just, you know, who is this person? What do they want? What's the stumbling block in the way of, you know, allowing them to achieve that? And then the conclusion, how do they achieve that? And is that surprising? Is that the outcome that they'd imagined? And very often it's not. So really it was the kind of the same, you know, I make scrapbooks and I'm full of notes, and we just kind of tackled it in the same way as I would any other character.
What I loved about this particular film in the series is that it is everything all at once. It's outrageous, it's juicy, it's tense, and then it's really funny, and then it's violent, and then it's deeply spiritual. I was raised as Catholic, 8-day week Catholic, so I recognize, I really was like, whoa, some of the stuff was really great.
Yes.
And unexpected. And that to me, it just hooked me from the very beginning.
Yeah, did it have an effect on like the faith thing? How did you feel? Like, how do you feel about it now? I mean, is it?
To be honest, I was quite moved by some of the speeches that Father
too.
Judd says, really moved by the perspective. And I was like, and as I said, I'd been from diapers up until, you know, I was living on my own. We had to go to church and Sunday school, all the lot of it. But it's been a while. Lapsed Catholic, I think they call us.
Same.
So I was moved by that. And I was like, oh, isn't that an interesting perspective?
Yeah.
And what I think is, and I was going to say this a little bit later, but I'm just going to tell you now. I live with a 17-year-old. I have 2 boys, and one is still in the house. And he's a very harsh critic loves movies. Harsh critic of his mom, as he should be. He's a teenager. But also of film and, you know, very independent. And he loved this film. And I was really like, wow, he sat the whole time, not on his phone, watching the movie.
That's great.
Which was amazing. And he loved it. He said, I think it might be my favorite movie of the year. So I do think that there's this undercurrent, and it's how all the cast plays together. But there's one thing in the character that you have, and this isn't a spoiler. You can see it in the trailer, everybody. And I'm looking at you now, and I thank you for wearing a V-neck because I can see you do not have a tattoo.
No, I do not. No, I mean, I do have tattoos, but not the ones that are in the film. Thankfully, I would say. But they were a kind of, I mean, you know, we'd talk about prepping a character, you know, costume and little details like that are really important, and particularly with Father Judd, who, you know, we know, again, not spoilers, but we know that he has a sort of violent past and a kind of, not necessarily a secret, because I think his whole ethos at the beginning of the film is that he is honest, he's true, he is accepting of his faults, of his past, and he's changed and he's making a difference, or attempting and trying to be of service. And what I really like about the tattoos, and what Ryan and I talked about, was, that he's not hiding it in a way, that we have the dog collar, but we can still see the tattoos. And when he rolls up his sleeve, you can see you know, that there's a sort of, he's made peace with his past, and that's okay, and he doesn't need to sort of hide or cover anything up. He is who he is.
Yeah, I love that, because it's not like, oh, there's a surprise when he rolls up his sleeve. And you're like, oh, he has a tattoo. It's right there.
It's right there, smack
and you
on the
can't
neck.
quite figure out what it is, and you're like, oh.
Exactly.
That was a great.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Daniel Craig. Because I know you guys have great chemistry. I have the internet.
Very good. Yeah.
And I've seen the way you two interact. And I think because of Bond, we think of him as like, Daniel Craig. But he's really
he's like a total goofball.
Well, isn't this something?
Right? It's hard to be in here and not feel his presence.
Whose? Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're not a Catholic.
No, very much not, no.
How was that for you actually working together? Because you have a lot of stuff with him, and it's really fun, and it's very serious. It goes through the full arc, you know.
Full circle in that way,
circle,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's, I would say for British actors in particular, you know, we look up to people like Daniel, and I saw Daniel on stage when I was at drama school, and you know, people often forget, or that aren't necessarily into the theatre scene, but Daniel is an extraordinary actor who's worked for many, many years prior to Bond on stage and screen. And there were films I'd seen of his and performances I'd seen of his prior to Bond that I was just kind of in awe of. So I've been a fan of his for a while, and I got to know him a little bit before this film. And he's just, he is a goofball. He's also an extremely passionate, hard-working actor who, there was one specific day I remember Ryan sitting at the monitor, and and he was completely entranced. We weren't rolling, but Ryan was just completely entranced watching on the monitor as Daniel had his headphones on, which he often has before a scene, and was kind of walking back and forth on the altar on our set. And he was just sort of doing his thing, his process. I don't know what that is, but he's really skilled. And I think the Knives Out series is a testament to this. But he's so skilled at knowing when to step up and when to be, to have a joke or have a laugh, and when to step back and give people space and himself space. I suppose it sounds kind of straightforward, but it's one of the hardest things, is to kind of read a room or know that this scene is going to, need something from someone else, or he's so respectful of each other, other people's process. He's also strong about what he needs. So I think the greatest thing I learned from Daniel was his leadership. He's a great leader in these casts, and everyone, the last couple of days been really fortunate to have moderators like Edward Norton and today Jamie Lee Curtis from the previous films, and both of them will say the same thing. Daniel is a natural born leader. So there's that, and then the other side of it, as you've kind of alluded to, is this sort of dynamic that Daniel and I have, which is the sort of big brother. He, likes to kind of mess me around a bit, and I love it, and I play along. We're great friends, and I'm really grateful to have his friendship, is the truth.
That's nice. And he like you is a shapeshifter too, and what he thinks. I remember seeing him as Ted Hughes in the Sylvia Plath movie, and just being like, and he's incredible.
Well, like Our Friends in the North, right at the beginning of, I don't know if it was the beginning of his career, but fairly early on, and that was an extraordinary performance. Yeah.
And then Glenn Close, who, I mean, for us, she's
upcoming actor. Yeah,
upcoming actress, Glenn Close. I know we
she's
always
really
like to say,
it.
like, what is it, 8-time Oscar nominated?
Yeah.
I mean, she just brings it every single role. And what's so amazing is to see her still operating at the highest level, at this point in her career, and loving it and having so much passion. And what a great character, and the chemistry between the two of you.
Yeah.
How was that working with her?
Oh, like a total treat. I mean, you're right to pick up on that. I remember my first day with Glenn on this, and I suppose, probably wrongly, but I'm definitely wrongly in Glenn's case, but I suppose I sort of always imagined that if you've been doing it that long at that level, as you rightly said, I think nominated 8 times, she's one of the greats. I don't know how you avoid complacency or sort of not getting over, being like, well, this is just my job. But Glenn hasn't. I don't know how she's done it. She's still so enthusiastic. There was a day where Daniel and I were doing the sort of Road to Damascus scene, and Ryan Johnson was stood there talking to us, and he was giving some notes, and then we were rehearsing, and he was backing up watching Daniel and I, and he bumped into someone, turned around, and it was Glenn, who had wrapped like 3 hours earlier, but was still there at the studio, just in her own clothes, just like excited to watch me and Daniel do something. It's like extraordinary. And she's, it's like such a generous heart and a soulful person. Yeah, I mean, like what a gift to go to work with her,
And Josh Brolin is fantastic in this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really...
It's a stacked cast. But, the other thing about the cast, which Ryan sort of talks about, and I think is really amazing, is, when I was at drama school in Bristol in England, it's a 3-year course, and in the second year, part of the course was you do this tour, and you travel around the UK building a set, doing a production, taking it down, putting it in the back of the van, everyone get in the van, you go to the next place. And it was my favourite part of the 3-year course. And I think in some ways, really for the whole of my career, I've been in search of that feeling of community and collaboration and that company feeling that you have on stage more often than not. And these Knives Out films have that. So you've got these great, like, huge movie stars, they're jumping on board as part of an ensemble, kind of out of a a hunger to be a part of something, to be in a group of people collaborating creatively and trying to, getting in the dirt and trying to come up with something that is meaningful, profound in some ways. So it's a rare case is the truth. These are all actors who are used to being number one on the call sheet, and they're all here working together. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I always hear about Ryan's movies. No one goes back to their trailers. No. And I know on Glass Onion, it was COVID, and so everyone was quarantined, so they had to be together. But you all didn't have to be together, but there was this kind of tent where you all hung out, right? Like it's a kind of
and I think it's, again, you hear... it's a kind of a small industry, really, as you know, and like we all kind of know each other somehow, 6 degrees of separation. And I think, I'd always heard sort of murmurs of these actors having a great experience making, I love the films, but hearing these great experiences people were having where it was very collaborative, it was like that company feeling. And so, yeah, I mean, I would equally say that my first day on set, I went to my trailer in the morning and I'd never seen a trailer like it. It was like bigger than my apartment. And so I was kind of like, yeah, great company feeling. I would quite like to spend a little bit of time in that trailer. But I didn't, and it's a testament to the fact that we just had, it was like summer camp or something. We had the greatest time. As you rightly said, we were in a tent, a very glamorous tent, but a tent on set. And if you weren't shooting, you were playing backgammon with Glenn or rock, paper, scissors with me and Daniel, slightly less complicated. But yeah, you're right. We had a really terrific time. Yeah.
Well, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is in the film, the comic relief is very satisfying.
Yeah.
And it's just perfectly done. And I was thinking about it, knowing that I was going to get a chance to speak with you. As a Brit, you're doing this as an American. And you have to hit, is there a certain rhythm? Because comedic timing is comedic timing, but the humor in Britain is different than the humor in America, and where you would put the tense. Like, so how was that for you? Because you have a lot of it, and it's unexpected.
I know, and the truth is, I found it hard is the truth. I mean, you read Ryan's scripts, a lot of the work is done for you by Ryan. The scripts are extraordinary, and, he writes so beautifully that there is a kind of rhythm inherently in that dialogue that informs some of the humor. But you're right, it's like there is a different sort of, I suppose a lot of British humor is uncomfortable and poking fun at ourselves, and and that's what I grew up with. But really, again, I think you're sort of fortunate to have Ryan leading the pack there. And then also on top of that, I mean, so much about Father Judd is actually resisting. I've just come from a Q&A with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she made the point that one of the difficult things about playing a role like Father Judd is that you're surrounded by all these brilliant actors giving their comic turn, and you're actually having to contain that at times. And so, the times where it come out more often than not was me and Daniel, and that was just because we were silly as heck and causing chaos. Yeah, I suppose it's interesting. I think, like, in some ways I didn't think too much about it, and I think that's a testament to Ryan as a writer and as a director.
Mm-hmm. You sweated it out before, and then you figured it out.
Exactly, yeah. And you feel it, and you can kind of feel it in a scene, It's like a... when you're working across from actors like Mila Kunis and Darryl McCormack and Katie Spinney and all the other guys, there's an element of like, they're kind of leading the way and I'm jumping on board and letting them do the work. Yeah.
Well, speaking of comedy, it was announced that you're hosting SNL.
Yes.
So that's just jumping
well, that's
right
like a whole,
in.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother level of like American humor.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up watching SNL. But in recent years, friends of mine have done it, and so I've watched them and I've loved it, and I find it very funny. And a lot of my favourite comedians have come from there, and I also love the history of it. That one of my favourite TV shows of all time was Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the Aaron Sorkin follow-up from West Wing, and I'm so excited to be in that sort of sacred space with with that cast and with Lorne and with everyone there and with the writers, that seems so thrilling and petrifying.
Yeah,
But,
I was just going to say, because this will come out after it airs, most likely.
So people know if it's any good at this stage. I hope it was all right. I hope I didn't trip up. That's my big fear. And also, as a fellow dyslexic, you'll know, everyone I've spoken to keeps being like, but the great thing, Josh, is there are cue cards. And I'm like, yeah, great, good luck. That means nothing to me. Like, words on a piece of paper is like my worst nightmare.
And worse, words like a distance.
Yeah, over there. Like, good luck. But I'm hoping they'll be able to help me out. Yeah.
And it's also, they're going to do SNL UK. Apparently, they're going to.
I heard that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're going to do that. So
yeah.
So then all of the younger Josh O'Connors can
they
grow
can go
up watching SNL, right?
Yeah, right.
That's so funny. I mean, it's so interesting that you have. I've been in this business for a long time, and it feels like it's been waves of talent, coming out from overseas, and it feels coming over, and it feels like we're in a huge wave right now, right? And obviously Emma Corrin, who played Princess Diana, Paul Mescal, Jessie Buckley, Louis Partridge. I spoke to him not too long ago for Jay Kelly. Do you all know each other? Are you guys all on a group text? Do you like run into each other on the circuit and be like, Americans are so crazy? Or have you had a bagel? Like what is, because I know we talk about like jacket potatoes, and anytime anybody goes over to London, we all kind of, it's so civilized.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, kind of. To different degrees. I mean, Emma and I did The Crown together, and they're a great friend of mine. And although we were texting recently, I haven't seen Emma in quite a while. So when I get home, I'm going to correct that. Yeah, I mean, Jessie Buckley is one of my closest friends. She's like a sister, and we've kind of grown up together in this industry. And we're actually really fortunate she's out here in LA at the moment, and we got to have some time together. So that's always really nice in those environments. Paul's also one of my best pals. And so, those little kind of encounters, particularly when you're here for work, it can feel overwhelming. Maybe it's true of anyone coming to LA if you're an actor and maybe you're from New York or whatever, but I think maybe particularly for us guys, for the British and the Irish and that contingent, it's like a long way to come. And we grew up with, the sort of architecture of our youth is sort of based on LA. A lot of the films were shot here, and the Hollywood sign is kind of extreme. Just the other day, me and Jessie were having an early morning hike at sunrise, and I was like, "Will you take a picture of me like next to the Hollywood sign?" And it was kind of like ridiculous. But it is sort of surreal. And so those moments where you can kind of have your friends around you that sort of remind you of your real life and home, that's they're sort of blessed moments, really. But in terms of that happening, I don't know. I mean, you just listed like some of my favorite actors. And so I suppose, there's all sorts of like, one of my favorite things is going to see a film or a television show, or going to the theatre and seeing a face that I don't necessarily know, and just like, we all love that, don't we? That feeling of like discovering someone, or backing someone from the beginning. There's nothing better than being a champion of a fellow actor. So it's so cool seeing people do great work and come over here.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I've never gotten over the Romeo and Juliet that you and Jessie did.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, it was just fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
but yeah, it is. We are in a wave now. We are definitely
that's
in a wave.
true.
And I could list more, but it's just those come to mind. It is kind of incredible and very exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Very excited
really
about it.
Exciting. Yeah.
All right. So I compared you a little bit to Daniel Craig in that you are such a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
And I remember this thinking it was so funny, and I loved how honest you were about being cast as Prince Charles. You said, "Well, at the end of the day, I am really the only actor with the sticky outy ears."
It's true. Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it, and don't let Peter Morgan tell you otherwise. Yeah, it's
but
true.
you have you been very deliberate about not being typecast? Is that something that runs through your head?
No, strangely, not really. I mean, Yeah, I think in some ways there's often the kind of question about like what it is that has led me, or people often are trying to find like the through line of, well, you played this character and this character. Is there like something about masculinity you're trying to explore? Or, in some ways, or at least if that is happening, that's kind of subconscious. I never really think in terms of like the bigger picture of, but I do think that there's an element of wanting to have a career that, where no stone has been left unturned, that I've been able to express different sides of myself and play a kind of range of characters. Even I look at the kind of actors that I aspire to, and people like Pete Postlethwaite and Gene Wilder, people who were able to kind of break your heart, feel something deep and profound, and then also have you in stitches of laughter. That having a diverse career like that I think is important to me. And it's also just more interesting, like, being able to challenge yourself and do these sort of varying roles. And I also don't discount the fact that I'm extremely fortunate. I often think about, as we discussed earlier, being at drama school, and some of the greatest actors I've ever witnessed or worked with were at drama school, or, in some of my early jobs on television and, on stage, and not all of them work, And so there is an element of, I think it's good to remind ourselves of just how lucky we are that we get to do this job and we get to do it regularly. And I've never taken that for granted. Yeah, right now I just feel, I'm being led by my nose, I guess. I just see sort of characters as, in a weird way, there's something about characters that they are answering a question that you sometimes don't even know you need answering in your own life. And that's the greatest privilege of being an actor, is that you have this career where you collect souls. I'm stealing that from Jessie Buckley, who says it, but it's I think it's true that we collect these souls, and that in some ways you are changed every time you play a character. They inform you as a person, and you learn something from them. So yeah, I don't know. It's been certainly the last few years have been really great. It's been so cool to play these sort of diverse set of characters. And
I love that each one of these characters has their own scrapbook that's been generated by you, and the thoughts and the process. I hope I know you for a long time, and I hope I'm around for a long time, and I hope you're around for a long time, because I would love the conversation about going back to day one and looking at who you were at that time that you were playing that character.
I know, it's funny.
It's kind of this amazing history that you're collecting.
I think that's part of the reason, obviously it's about developing a character, in these scrapbooks so almost serve as like a memory Bible for those characters. But they're also, my grandmother, who was a really meaningful person in my life, she was a ceramicist, a potter, or more of a ceramicist than a potter, but she kept scrapbooks her whole life. She'd go traveling around the world, and one of my favorite activities was having tea with her and sitting down and looking through her scrapbooks. And so it is also that. It's about marking these moments in your life which do inform you. And, and you have these incredible adventures of shooting in Italy, in like a small village, or in Boston, or wherever you are, Cincinnati last year. It's it takes you to extraordinary places, and I still go back to, a lot of these scrapbooks are incomplete, and so it's also an ongoing life work of, like, when I do have a moment, I'll go back to something and go like, I'm just going to add to that. But yeah.
Well, that's great. Okay, so a real life scrapbooking is your red carpet looks.
Thank you.
And it is like it's its own form of kind of performance art, at least how I look at it.
Yeah.
Right. And we were again in this transition where, especially our male actors, it was like you'd be in a suit, just going all the way through the dawn of the golden age of Hollywood and through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and what that looked like, the power suit, the tux. And this generation has really pushed those boundaries.
Yes.
And you've had some exceptional looks.
Yeah.
So when you're getting dressed for the red carpet, what's your intention behind it? Is it just kind of your stylist brings it to you and you're like...
Well, I mean, I'm really fortunate. Harry Lambert, who I work with, is fantastic, and just such a talented, like, artist, really, and has a really clear vision of things he likes, and he also knows what I like, and so we sort of tend to sort of find ourselves somewhere in the middle. But I mean, it sort of serves a purpose in some ways. I've always found, if I'm totally honest, I found the red carpet an intimidating place a lot of my career. As you know, it's like, it can be overwhelming. There was a moment a couple of years ago, whenever it was, we were releasing challenges, and I was, halfway through this crazy press tour. I was tired, jet lagged, and I was back in London, and it was the first time, because of COVID, I'd never really had a big red carpet Leicester Square event. Mm-hmm. And I sort of came out in front of the wall of photographers in this outfit, and I caught eyes with my parents and my brothers and my sister-in-law, and I was in tears. And I think it really taught me something, that, there's something so jarring about seeing your real life, these people who know me as me, mm-hmm. and then these people who know me as Josh O'Connor, the actor, and it can be really confusing. And so in a strange way, putting on these costumes, it sort of allows you to have almost like an armor, and protects the real you. The real me wouldn't wear those clothes necessarily, at home, obviously. So there is a bit of performance in that, but it's an act of protection, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's another dynamic added to the character of.
Right, exactly.
I enjoy it.
Good.
That's good. All right, I'm going to ask you the questions that I do for every guest. Mm-hmm. And speaking of family, this is kind of perfect because it's about birth order. So you have two brothers, I've heard you say. That's right. Yes. So how do you think your birth order affected or affects who you are in life?
Wow. Well, I mean, it'd be interesting to sort of run a survey and see what proportion of actors are middle children, which I am, because there seems to be like a theme going on, and so many actors I've met who have siblings who are middle children, and I don't know. So many times I've said I'm a middle child to a kind of more experienced actor, and they're like, well, of course you're an actor. And I'm always thinking, like, I wonder what that is. And I suppose, I mean, I'm really close with my brothers, and I really look up to both of them. I suppose, is there something about, the first child is a kind of, that's parents are like, what do we do with this thing? And there's a kind of mad attention to detail maybe, or an overprotection, I don't know. And I haven't got kids myself, so I haven't experienced that. But, and then the youngest is sort of the most loved traditionally, maybe. I don't know, the kind of the baby of the house. And that maybe, I think the theory is that the middle child is sort of lost in between, and that they're just the middle child. And so maybe actors, they're trying to get in front of people to get, to be seen. But I never felt like that. I was like, I have incredible parents with whom I felt very seen and understood, and I'm sure as a nightmare as a child, but they were very good with me. And so I don't know how it's affected me really, except in a way that I feel very lucky to have a family dynamic that I want to be around. I love getting home and being with my brothers and my family.
That's a win. That's a huge win.
It's a big win, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to fly through these. Your JOMO. So this is like joy of missing out. So something that people love. Like for me, cruise. Why would anybody want to go to a cruise? Why would anybody want to go to IKEA? Like there are certain things that I'm like, yeah.
God,
no. So good. Do you have any things that you are so happy not to have to do?
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That other people like doing.
I mean, a cruise would be up there for me. I cannot for the life of me understand why you'd want to do that. Mm-hmm. I have JOMO about like a yacht, if I was wealthy enough to have a yacht, like it would never cross my mind. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to diss the yacht guys, but well, I do a little bit. I think probably cruise ships. I mean, mostly I'm sort of intrigued by other people's experiences. So, but I know for a fact that I wouldn't enjoy.
I'll watch the documentary. Don't get me wrong.
Agreed.
I will be
Agreed.
watching the documentary that it will
Yes.
be reaffirming why
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
am not ever going to do that.
Yeah,
But
that's
yes.
the same for me. Exactly.
All right. Do you have any irrational fears, like that make no sense or truly irrational?
I mean, I would say this is a rational fear, but I have a fear, and I know where it comes from. It comes from being 7 years old or 8 years old and watching the Titanic, and there's a scene in that film where the parents put their kids to sleep. You know, they're settling them in, stroking them, knowing that they're going to drown. I mean, honestly, like, I just remember seeing that film. That haunted me for years. But as I'm saying this is like a rational fear. Although I'm an adult now, I think I'd
Yeah.
know not to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And also I wouldn't be seen dead on a cruise ship, so it would be fine.
It would be fine.
So that's
That's fair.
my
It's
irrational
all
fear.
of a theme.
Exactly. Yeah. Is it all nautical?
All nautical. No, thank you. Although the fits are good, but like,
Yeah, right.
that's about as far as I'm going to go.
Yeah.
All right. Last question is, and this one's more emotional. Is there a core memory for you as a child or growing up, or even or more recent, that was like a fork in the road that you go back to a lot?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, loads is the truth. I think actually that kind of like comes together with this film actually really nicely. I think when Ryan and I first met, we talked a lot about faith, and as I said earlier, and it was around that time, year before that, I'd made a film called La Chimera, which deals a lot with grief, and again was a character that really informed me and helped me out at a time of grief. And so I often find myself thinking about my grandmother as like as someone, you know, and I think I've got quite a big family, a kind of wider extended family, and I think she affected all of us in a positive way, and we are all quite reminiscent of her and think of her very often. We have a very large WhatsApp group in our kind of extended family, which is named after her, and she's ever present in my life. You know, also my house is full of her ceramics, and so she's always there. But I think the reason I say her is that, you know, she's one of those people who, you know, both my parents were so encouraging of me as an actor and with acting and artwork and any of my other interests. But my grandmother was just someone who I think gave us all the space, me and my brothers and my cousins and my parents and their siblings. And you could feel her pride in any artistic sort of challenge that you took on. And I think that's had a big impact on me in my life, and believing that that this is not just a sort of fun job. It's meaningful and can be profound. And I think that comes from her.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank
It's been
you.
great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
Really good to see you. And like I said, I'll get you the next time for the next movie.
Yeah,
but
please.
this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you in church.
See you in church. Yeah, God bless you. God bless you.